I was responsible for bringing in the millions of dollars a year. Our rule was if we don't have a sale by noon, someone's integrity is out. Look, it's not easy living this way. Let me just say something really quick. It is so much easier to just do, force your way through, do the marketing, get on as many sales calls as you can, play the numbers game, and not have any kind of concern about the energetic alignment of the 3 types of integrity. Having the humility to deep dive into yourself like this and confess to yourself where you are out of integrity is so much harder. For women, it's a lack of belief in self. Why I think business is one of the most spiritual things you can do, because it requires such a level of surrender and reinvention and self-development to have success. Once you get to a point where you're 10 out of 10, high conversion rates, magnetism, magic, it just sells itself.
Hi, everyone. Today we are talking about a topic near and dear to my heart because I am in the midst of this. We are talking about femininity in business. We are talking about feminine self-leadership and discovering truly, to me, which I feel like in this male-dominated world, feels like a transformative power of embracing your feminine side when you are selling yourself, you are selling a product, or maybe just even pitching an idea. We're talking about using your intuition, nurturing relationships, and leveraging our emotional intelligence to enhance our business and sales stamina. Because we are always selling. And I think as women, and this is something that I'm kind of like taking from my guest Julie already, but like we're so good at it already inherently as women. And so it's just a matter of like owning that power, stepping into it more consciously, because I do believe that we thrive when we feel good about ourselves, right? When we feel confident in who we are connected to ourselves, we are connected to our intuition, our why, and we're not connecting to those things. The more time we spend telling ourselves that we are not good enough, that we have to work harder, that we have to work faster, constantly leaning way too hard into the masculine. And so we're no longer doing that. Today, we are learning how to consciously shift and leverage the feminine in business because we are truly on our own timelines, trusting in who we are, capable of what we can do. And we're doing it for ourselves, not to impress and not to perform for anybody. So, hi, everyone. This is Helena, your host of our Boundaries of Selves podcast, the place to become more self-expressed and healed. Because I truly believe that the more you lean into your healing, the more you lean into your self-expression, the more you can live life from a place of purpose and authenticity. Today, I'm joined by Julie, a sales and business coach who helps women sell more with less with the feminine selling method. Welcome, Julie. I am so excited to have you here today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I loved that intro. I'm like, ooh, there's so much to say about that. There's so much to say about that. There's so much to say about that. So I'm not sure which path you want to go down. I'll let you lead. But yes, it's my favorite conversation in the whole world. So I'm so happy to be here and hopefully making a difference for your audience in a pretty profound way and having this conversation.
I'm sure they will. So everyone grab a pen and paper, like your journal, and get ready to learn a bunch. I have no doubts that there's going to be so many golden nuggets. I do want to start with the beginning. If I was a fly on the wall in let's say in your 20s and your 30s, what would I have seen you go through that shaped your journey to becoming a coach that focuses on femininity in sales?
Yeah. It's funny. It's a little ironic because growing up, my dad was in sales. And I just remember he'd get home from work in his suit and his briefcase and all of that. And I distinctly remember thinking, man, that looks like that really sucks. I never want to be in business. I never want to be in sales. I could never. And so growing up, I was always very creative and artsy and dancing and painting and on like riding horses, like just very girly, like artistic, free thinking. And so I get to college and I'm like very much in this sort of academic, intellectual pursuit. I graduate from college and I'm like, I don't know what to choose. I want to choose the right thing. So I'm going to wait as far as making a decision. And I'm just going to go to New York City because that's where all my friends are going and hang out with them. And obviously you can't just go to New York and not have money. So,
Right. Oh
The
my
book, The
God.
Secret came out at that time. And I was like, I'm just going to like manifest my way into a great job. And amazingly enough, that's exactly what I did. So I got offered within several
Wow.
months of moving to New York City, I got offered this very, very competitive, very good job doing communications planning for a very big brand at a very international, great company, great benefits. I mean, it's kind of crazy how that all played out. But, it's just the laws of the universe are the laws of the universe, and I used them. But, people were fired. I was given their job for competitive analysis and lots of spreadsheets and lots of numbers. I still am very bad at that. I still outsource all that stuff. Like, it is so far outside of my area of expertise, genius, comfort. So I began to really suck at my job. I was really unhappy. I was not performing well. Long story short, I was let go, but with given really nice unemployment. And I used that time to pursue, like, what do I want to do? And the truth was, what I really wanted to do, but what I was afraid to admit to myself, was I wanted to be a marine mammal biologist. Now, the reason I was afraid to admit it to myself, despite having had that like secret desire in me since I was very, very, very young, was because I did some research on it. I discovered it was a male dominated field. I discovered you had to have a really strong science background. You had to have really strong GRE scores, like all this kind of stuff. But I was like, you know what? I will probably fail at this, but I must try to at least apply to grad school and see if I can get in. And that way I can at least say that I did it. I'll probably fail, but at least then I can live without regrets. Fast forward 6 months, I got a
Right.
full scholarship to Hong Kong University for marine mammal biology. I did the exact same process as far as the mindset and the visualizing and all of that. Shipped myself off to Hong Kong. And I
Nuts.
discovered while I was there that it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And obviously, I loved the dolphins. I loved a lot of parts of what I was doing, but I did not like the fact that I was not really making an impact. I did not like the massive amount of ego in academia and so much, honestly, just like low consciousness, which surprised me because I thought we were all there to like make the world better. Like, that was my young idealistic self. So to get there and have so much politics, gossiping, and tearing down of other people, and furthermore, to publish a paper that
Wow.
only 2 people read, this just wasn't my idea of purpose and impact. So I get there and I'm like depressed. I'm like, that feeling when you actually get what you want and then find out that this isn't what I thought it was going to be. It's depressing. It's really depressing. And I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do. And around that time, a friend of mine at the university was very, very persistent about enrolling me to go to the yoga studio with her in town, which Hong Kong, for anyone who doesn't know, is one of the most expensive cities in the world. I was there on like this tiny little
Interesting.
studentship of like $25,000, like living off of like
Wow.
$1 noodle plates. You know what I mean? Like, it's so
Oh
the
my God.
membership for this yoga studio was like, I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but it was way outside my budget. And I kept saying, no, 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 no. Fortunately, she was very persistent. Thank God for people with a vision who see a possibility for you, who stand for you. Thank God for those people who just don't give up on you. So I went to one of their free classes, and I'll just never forget. I was like Prasarita Padottanasana, wide leg forward fold, sweating my face off. And this feeling of peace just like overcomes me. And I'm like, I'm home. It was exactly what I was looking for. Like, I didn't know what I was looking for, but at least I had this feeling of like insight and peace and feeling centered. I'm home. So I signed up for a year-long membership at this yoga studio, fully knowing I can't afford it, but just stepping out in faith. Fast forward 1 week later, out of nowhere, I was invited to teach kids dance because, like you, I love dance and have a strong background with it. I get invited to teach kids dance, and it is triple what I'm getting paid for the studentship. Cash under the table because I'm an expat and not supposed to be getting paid. I say that now because we're like 20 years later. And it's like within a week, I was provided the resources that I needed to move forward on my purpose. And I think that's such a powerful lesson to pause and take note of, that when you move closer to what you want moves closer to you. I got that from one of my mentors, Michael Burnoff. And it's stepping out in faith. It doesn't always make sense. In fact, sometimes it's straight up delusional. Sometimes it's like
Mm.
anyone else around you would be like, you are crazy. This is absolutely not responsible. Like, you should not do this. But if you feel something strongly and you step out in faith, and then you take the committed action and you have the focus and you have that ninja mindset to believe in yourself and in your vision to keep going, God has such an amazing, funny way of providing for you. And I've always done that throughout my entire career. I've taken these irresponsible, quite honestly, illogical leaps of faith. My mantra became over the course of my life, God never doesn't catch me. And I know that's a weird double negative, but it's like I needed to have that in my mind because he never doesn't catch me, because something about he always catches me wasn't quite as powerful. He never doesn't catch me. So that was a big one for me. And I learned that very, very, very early on. And I think that was one of the reasons why I've been so accelerated in my journey of success and growth. So just putting that there for a second. At this yoga studio, I meet the most amazing forward thinkers, such people in the world of coaching, entrepreneurship, creativity, personal development. And it was through this community that I met one of my best friends, who I'm still best friends with today. And she really introduced me to the world of, she had a coach. I'm like, what's a coach? She introduced me to the world of manifesting, like you can create your reality. I mean, it was like a whole other way of life, a whole other lifestyle, a whole other planet of existence that I didn't even know existed. I became obsessed. I just drank up anything I could find in the realm of this topic of manifesting, personal development, and self growth, entrepreneurship, all of this. So I finished my degree and immediately pivoted into getting yoga teacher certified, moving into empowering other people, helping people on their path of clarity and purpose. And that was really where this journey started. I was a yoga teacher. I was hosting retreats. I was teaching classes, and my classes became very, very popular. And people would like line up to speak with me at the end of class, which was very impractical because there was another class coming in. I couldn't really like process their whole experience with every single person in line. And so I started taking their names, emails, and phone numbers, developing a database. And I just thought, what if I work with them virtually? This was like 11 or 12 years ago, before, we were like on Skype, like way before Zoom. And so I started just
Oh my
offering them
God.
opportunities to work with me in this like one-on-one container for 3 months, half yoga, half coaching, purpose, life purpose type of stuff. And it sold out. I sold out. I made $90,000 as a yoga teacher in my first 6 months doing this.
Wow.
That's unheard of for most yoga teachers. That's unheard of. People started to come to me like, how are you doing this? At which point my support kind of moved into sort of like business coaching and marketing and sales, but like kind of behind the scenes. I wasn't like advertising myself as that. I didn't start to advertise myself as more of a business coach until a little bit later on. And I started a group coaching program. It came with in-person gorgeous retreats, teaching sales, clarity of purpose, branding, heart opening experiences. I mean, some of the people from those retreats are still best friends today. Like, it was one of those amazing transformational things. And then COVID happened, and then no more as far as in-person retreats go. I shifted everything online. And soon after that,
Wow.
I decided to really lead with sales and marketing, especially sales, because I was getting so much feedback. Every time I got on the phone with someone or met someone, they were like, how do you do business and sell in such a powerful but feminine way? Or how are you so feminine and graceful but powerful at the same time? And this sort of juxtaposition kept coming out in everybody's questions just organically over and over and over. I was like, I think there's something to this. I rebranded my entire business around this whole feminine selling thing, the feminine selling method. Feminine Selling Academy is my flagship program. Limitless Ladies Mastermind, that's my mastermind. So it was all about how to do business in this aligned way, leveraging our unique abilities, nature, and skills that are like built into us as women. It's just so funny because now here I am loving and teaching sales and circling all the way back when I resisted it. The apple really doesn't fall far from the tree is what I'm trying to say. The difference is that it's the same outcome. It's the same outcome as far as sales, revenue growth, all of that. The way there is just very different. The way there is very, very, it's sort of like an evolved version of what I watched my dad doing. I evolved it and I made it better just through my own learning and essence.
Everything you said, I was like, wow, this is why I love listening to stories. Like, your story is so honest and so authentic, and it makes so much sense now because I was literally going through your LinkedIn. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, Wait, how is all of this coming together? And it's fascinating. I love it. I love it so much. I love how life just does that. It sends us off into these trails, but the things that we think like, why am I doing this? At some point, the dots start to connect.
Mm,
Coming back to the misconception though, like you watching your dad having an understanding of what sales, was like in a masculine way, like, I'm starting to feel like maybe men are just driven differently.
mm,
I worked a year in sales and corporate and, like,
yeah.
all they cared about was, like, money, like, and that was the way the sales manager, like, "Go get that money." What I care about is, like, the purpose, like, why am I working with these people? What are the outcomes? How am I making your life better? Is there a very clear delta between how women relate to sales versus and what they've been taught what sales is, like what is that thing, and then how do you unlearn
Mm.
and relearn your natural way of doing sales that empowers you?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Back when I was running a lot of ads, my business partner, he called it, we like threw rocks. I don't need to name drop, but I'm sure anyone listening right now can think of some of those, male aggressive types of selling methods. And here's what happens when women try to pursue those methods. Either it works for them up until a point, and then there is some kind of consequence down the line, whether it's burnout, health problems, could be unhappy customers where there isn't alignment because they forced the sale, which is a lot of what those guys are doing. The difference, I think, with the men, though, is that they relate to each other differently. So it doesn't have the same impact on them
Mm.
physically, energetically, physiologically, emotionally. I do think it works for them. I don't think that these guys are insincere teaching these methods. I believe that they work because I'm sure they do. But with women, either they're going to get burnt out and there's going to be this sort of energetic physiological consequence, or they try the method and it just straight up doesn't work. And then the consequence is that the woman becomes demoralized and gives up. And now she's making up stories about herself, about sales. Oh, sales is not for me. Sales is for other people. I'm better maybe behind the scenes. I'm better doing this, or I just suck at sales. And that's not the truth at all. It's just that that method wasn't for her as a woman. There's a new way, a different way, and it's the feminine way. There's multiple aspects to it, and it is designed specifically for women. The women in my mastermind, for example, their close rates on high ticket sales, meaning $3,000 and above, up to like $30,000, is 60%. And it's not because they're extra amazing at sales. It's because they're using the feminine selling principles. So it's all about the methods and the principles. And it's really not about what you say or how you say it, although, yes, that can play a part. It's not as big a part as a lot of the men would have you believe.
I think it's so interesting when you say that. It's just like the method doesn't work for us. Instead of looking at, hey, how can we do things differently, we instantly, and this is a very female thing, like
Yes.
instantly look at for faults
Yes.
within ourselves and like, oh,
Yes.
we're just not good at it. And I've
Yes.
been there. I've been there 100%. So let's dive into it. What are the principles
Okay.
that you teach and that you coach women on?
Yes. I'll talk about three today, have different levels of depth we can get into, but the three principles that I can say right off the bat would make the most difference for anybody who tried them would be: number one, the three types of sales integrity. I definitely want to start with that today because I think it'll resonate with a lot of people. Number two, understanding the personality archetypes. And when you understand who you're speaking with, and you can identify it right away, that's one of the things that my people learn is within seconds, identifying the type of archetype you have in front of you right now. It's not about pretzeling yourself the way a lot of women do. It's not about manipulation to try to like get them to like you or get them to do something. It's about having compassion for who is in front of you to be able to make the biggest possible difference for them so that they feel heard and understood and like you really care. So, personality archetypes. And then the third is a method that I created, which is an acronym called Cultivate. And each of the letters represents a different step in the process. And the purpose of Cultivate is that by the time you get to the offer, the prospect is basically convincing themselves to buy. If you do Cultivate right, you avoid having to deal with objections because at that point, it's more just a question of like, how do you want to pay for this type of thing? And it also weeds out if the person is just not a good fit, in which case you just don't make them an offer. The three types of sales integrity. Now, credit where credit is due. I learned this from one of my mentors. And she works with very high level execs and Super Bowl winners and Olympic athletes. And she has no interest in teaching the people and being on podcasts like this. So she gave me the okay to go out in the world and be the one who carries on this information. So credit where credit is due that I learned it from her. And it's been life changing for me and for the people who we've shared it with. So 3 types of sales integrity: physical, emotional, spiritual. I'm going to start with physical because it's like the most duh and it makes the most sense. Physical integrity is really straightforward. It's, are you sending the emails? Are you making the phone calls? It's, are you doing the follow up? It's really just, are you doing the thing? And so right off the bat, someone might be listening to this and the real honest truth is I haven't been doing the thing. I haven't been doing the marketing. I haven't been making the phone calls, in which case, if we're going to put this at a scale of 0 to 10 and you haven't been doing the things, if you're at like a 2 out of 10, right off the bat, why sales aren't happening for you. So easy enough to identify that. Now, if you're at like a 10 out of 10 and you're doing the things and the sales still aren't happening, let's move on to emotional integrity. Emotional integrity is about how you're feeling. People get this confused. They think this is physical integrity, but this is still emotional integrity. If you're sick, or if you are, like we talked about the last time we connected, like I was going through a breakup and I was just completely distracted and in my process and crying every single day, that's called emotional integrity. And the thing about emotional integrity is that your goal with emotional integrity is authenticity. So it's not about getting yourself to a place of I'm perfect and I'm just rising above all the feelings and I'm a robot and I don't feel anything. That's not emotional integrity. Emotional integrity is, for example, like me getting on the podcast with you here right now and acknowledging, like I've been up and down in my state of distraction and emotions and how I'm doing and processing things because I'm processing a breakup. That is like 10 out of 10 emotional integrity. If I were to get on here and say, I'm great, life is good, everything is amazing, that's like a 2 out of 10 emotional integrity. And the thing is, and I'm sure you can relate with this, I'm sure anyone listening can relate with this, you can really tell when someone's pretending, they're showing up like, woohoo, everything is good. And you can just tell something isn't right. And what that does is it actually breaks trust. And so when you break trust with your audience or with the prospect in that way, then it automatically puts something in the person's head, like there's something off with her and I can't tell what it is. I just know I don't want to buy from this person. Whereas if you open the conversation with honesty, it's not about not being professional. It's about being honest and authentic. Like, hey, going through something, but you know what? Like, I'm here to serve you. Hopefully, maybe even telling you the truth about where I'm at actually makes a difference for you on your human journey as well. So that being said, my intention for this conversation today is here's what we're going to talk about. And then it's like being in your leadership.
Is this emotional integrity towards yourself or is it client facing? But you just answered the question. And I think it makes so much sense because the meetings, and I'm just thinking of, meetings with clients or just internal stakeholders that I've had to sell to. If I started off with a check-in and just being really honest without oversharing, just being like, this is how I feel,
discernment,
right? It's not a big deal. Like, I don't need to be emotional about it because I'm honest with myself first. I'm processing inwardly first, but this is just how I feel. It does like help people trust you. So it makes so much sense.
It is possible to be professional and authentic at the same time. If you feel like you can't be professional and sharing it, it's time to cancel that meeting and reschedule it. If we were doing this interview like the week of the breakup happening for me, I probably would have said, you know what? I'm not in a place where I can show up and serve today. Can we reschedule to next week? Here's what I'm going through. And then that has emotional integrity. It's different for every person. You can't sit here and say, oh, like if you're going through something hard, cancel everything. And no, there's no blanket statement. Like you have to be, like you said, honest with yourself and check in and do what feels like it has integrity in that moment, which is going to be different in different times for different people. But as long as you know you have integrity and authenticity with yourself, then that conversation will be blessed.
I mean, we haven't talked about the archetypes yet, but do you feel like depending on the archetype, some of that is not super welcomed, like emotional integrity? Like how have your experiences been where it's been rejected,
It's a great question. We can totally talk about that here. The boss, so there's the boss, the humanitarian, the sage, and the star. The boss hates feelings. The boss hates feelings. They desire intimacy, but they suck at it. They desire vulnerability, but they suck at it. The boss is all about results, results, results. And they're human, and they, unless they're a sociopath, they want connection. You know what I mean? The boss, like, in order to influence them effectively, you do need to maintain authority. But what I've discovered with, I am a boss personality, and what I've discovered is
Same.
that, yes, what I've discovered is that, and this is where people started to say that feedback to me, gosh, you're so feminine and powerful at the same time. When I am in that authentic vulnerability and I am my authentic boss essence, there's a magic there. There's actually a magic there. And it's something very refreshing, and it unlocks something for people. And it's not something you see very much in the world. There's a magnetism to it. So if a boss is willing to do the very hard work to feel the feelings that they really don't want to feel, there is a treasure to be found in doing that. It is worth it. It's hard, but it's worth it. Now, on the other side of the spectrum is the humanitarian who loves feelings. The humanitarian will sit there and listen. They will cancel whatever they have on their schedule to the point of self-sacrifice to listen to your feelings for hours and hours and hours and hours. They love feelings. What they're not as good at is results, because they've canceled their whole schedule to go listen to someone's feelings.
Oh my God.
The sage, the more analytical, I kind of like endearingly call them heads on sticks, because they so want that connection with their heart and with your heart. They just really suck at it. And it's really hard for them. And they have a lot of resistance to it. Not because they hate it like the boss does. And you get a controller sage, or sorry, a boss sage, where it's like you get that controller personality plus the analytical personality together in one person. That person has a long way to go. They have to really want their transformation and really be feeling the pain of the cost of not being connected to their heart and avoiding their feelings. Lots of times they will see lots of relationship breakdowns, that person. They've got to really get to a point of being at rock bottom to have that desire to transform, because it is so hard for them. But again, there's treasure there. For the boss sage who's willing to do the work, there is treasure. Now, the star feelings are more accessible until a point, and then there's a wall, and then they don't let anybody in, including themselves. So the star is so my primary is the star. My secondary is the sage. Usually people have a primary and a secondary. And my primary is the star. Like, the whole world knows everything about me up until a point. And then it's like, nope,
Yeah.
nobody knows anything, like barely even myself. What's amazing and beautiful about this breakup that I've been walking through is I'm starting to break down this wall even to myself and let myself into myself at a new level. And I believe that as I continue to transform that level of intimacy with myself, and whoever gets to be let into that space in terms of partnership, it's going to be like so beautiful. Like, that's my transformation. That's the treasure that I get to have as a star. That's a little glimpse of how the personality archetypes relate to that.
That's so interesting. So what I'm taking from that, kind of relaying it back to the question, is like just knowing the archetypes and how they're connecting, but then also being able to like frame it in a way where, for example, with the boss, you're
Yeah.
still maintaining
Authority.
authority. You're just like, hey, I'm going through something. However, for the best outcome of our conversation, I feel like we should reschedule, and this is what I propose. Like,
Yeah,
just like giving them a little bit, being
that's
authentic,
right.
but then still being like, I'm on point. I still got you in terms of what you need emotionally to feel safe.
Totally. Beautifully said. Or if you do choose to have a meeting, you're at a point where you can be professional and authentic, then it's like, it's always like hey, how are you? My response would be, honestly, not great. Like, walking through some significant life challenges, and like really happy to be here with you and serve.
Oof. So elegant. Yeah, I love that. I love that tension that happens between this softening, but then also still being very straightforward and like action oriented. As you say, there is that magical and that kind of like tension that was like, ooh, we're able to be like right in the middle and hold that power of these like opposing forces that are happening.
Yeah.
Like, you're not fully here, but you're not fully here. I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now that makes so much sense. Going back to the emotional integrity.
Yes.
And those were all of the archetypes, like the sage, the star, the boss, and then
Humanitarian.
the humanitarian.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those are like the four archetypes. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So moving into spiritual integrity,
Let me just say one more thing
how
about emotional integrity.
uh-huh.
When I was learning about these three types of integrity, it was so interesting because the person who taught it to me, my coach, she was also my boss for a year as I was the president of life coaching at her company. And part of my role, I managed the sales KPI. I was responsible for bringing in the millions of dollars a year in their coaching company. And it was so interesting because our rule was if we don't have a sale by noon, someone's integrity is out. In terms of whose
Wow.
integrity was out, it could have been me. It could have been the person doing the sales, like the sales team. It could have been the vice president of life coaching. It could have been any of the life coaches. And so if we didn't have a sale
Mm-hmm.
by noon, my actual job was to go and find out whose integrity is out and resolve it. So an example of me looking into whose integrity was out would be, for example, if someone on my sales team has a promise to herself, which by the way, it's about there's no right or wrong. It's like integrity. Let's just define integrity. Integrity is you have a vision for your life. There are certain values that you uphold to achieve that vision. And if you are walking in alignment with those values, you are walking in integrity. If you have a certain vision and you have certain values and you are being or doing in such a way that is not walking with those values, you are not in integrity. And that is just the definition of integrity as I have it. So let's say her value is I take care of myself, I nourish myself, I value myself, I fill my cup, and then I go out into the world and serve. If that's her value and she woke up in the morning kind of like in a frenzy and didn't do her breakfast and her morning fitness routine, and here she is now showing up on calls and we don't have a sale by noon, and I go to her and I'm like, where do you think your integrity is out? And she's like, well, if I'm honest, I didn't eat my breakfast, I didn't do my morning routine, and I feel kind of off. That means that her emotional integrity is off. If she's honest, her emotional integrity is like a 5 out of 10. And so what does she do to resolve? She actually steps away from work for a minute, does something to resolve her emotional integrity, makes herself a nice cup of tea, bounces on a trampoline, like goes for a walk, whatever she needs to do, gets back to work. Guess what happens? It was like clockwork. A sale comes in, not even necessarily from her, but
Interesting.
maybe from someone else on the team, because now that alignment is restored. When we identify and we're honest with ourselves, look, it's not easy living this way. Let
Hmm.
me just say something really quick. It is so much easier to just do, force your way through, do the marketing, get on as many sales calls as you can, play the numbers game, and not have any kind of concern about the energetic alignment of the 3 types of integrity. It is so much easier. Honestly, having the humility to deep dive into yourself like this and confess to yourself where you are out of integrity is so much harder. It is so
100%.
much harder. And yet, if you're willing to do this, this will move the needle so much farther in a way that promotes so much more health and rest and magnetism and magic and alignment than any of the doing ever will. And so if you're willing
Wow.
to sit with yourself and you have some kind of promise like that, where like, I have a sale by noon every day, and if I don't, something is out of integrity, and you're willing to go through and be honest with yourself, like, you know what? I was avoiding that hard conversation with someone, and I get to go have that you know what?
Mm.
I have been avoiding doing the laundry, or I've been tolerating. These are really good questions to ask yourself, by the way. If anyone wants to write this down, these are good questions to ask to identify where your integrity could be out in any of these areas. What are you avoiding? What are you tolerating? Maybe you're
Wow.
tolerating being mistreated in a relationship. Maybe you're tolerating a mess that's in your house. And it's not about being perfect. It's that if your value is to be tidy and you're tolerating a mess, now you're now officially blocking your own flow. No matter what you do, you are blocking the flow. So this is just sort of to get the gears turning on how to think about these different types of integrity. Maybe you have a promise to yourself to take care of yourself and nourish yourself, and you skipped breakfast because you didn't have time. You've now broken the integrity. And again, it's not about legalism or trying to be perfect. It's about just living day to day in alignment and truing up to your own values.
I find it fascinating because when I left corporate, I handed in my resignation. One of the business developers, he like came up to me, he was like, "It's the grind, huh? It's too much of a grind." And in
Mm,
my mind, I was like, "You have no freaking idea. The grind I can do 10 times harder than you." As women, I just feel like we can endure more pain.
yeah.
We're more resilient than we allow ourselves to believe. And I was like, no, like I have been in this masculine environment. I know how to grind it out. What's lacking for me, and I wish I had the words then, but because it's just sent me down this hole. What's lacking for me is the purpose.
Mm,
I don't see why I'm doing this with the people here. They're so out of alignment, and I'm not selling anything because it's just so toxic for me.
Yeah.
But then again, I just took that on me. Like I knew I could grind, but then I was like, "Oh my god, but what is it? I guess I'm just not made for sales." Like you were just saying, you know? But it's just
Exactly.
like for those of us, like if we have the physical down, not everyone has the physical down, but if we are the people who know how to grind it out, then it's probably an emotional topic,
Yes.
it's probably a spiritual
Yes.
topic. If you're a hard worker, it's not the doing aspect, it's the energetics and how everything is aligning. And I just love how you made that so digestible.
Yeah. And exactly. Like I am that person too, where I am a hard worker and I really embraced this method because I have paid the prices. I have gotten like this sick where I couldn't get better for 3 weeks. I've had the perpetual sinus infections or cortisol issues or even manifesting like serious injuries like L4, L5 herniation. Like I've really paid the prices to a point where I was like, if I don't figure out another way, I just can't keep doing this.
Yeah.
That's a really good segue, what you just said, into spiritual integrity, which
Tell us.
is about believing in yourself and believing in what you're selling. So you weren't
Ooh,
believing in what you were selling. And I'm like that too. I'm very good at sales, but if I try to sell something that I have any kind of doubt or non belief around, I will block myself no matter how skillful I am. And
mm,
I'm very skillful. And so what I've learned is that it is essential for me to, like, for example, if I develop a new course or program, I will not put it on the market until I'm super clear on the value of it for who I'm offering it to. I just can't and I won't. Once I'm spiritually behind it, I'm like, let's go. And then I become obsessed. And I think women are like that,
I
like
love it.
when we find a makeup line that we like or a skincare line or a movie, like my sister the other day, she went on for like 30 minutes about this Netflix TV show that she found. And I just let her talk because that's how women are. When we find something that we're obsessed with, we just can't help ourselves. And so when you have that obsessive feeling and that belief in yourself and your offer and your product and whatever it is you're selling, it's like nothing can stop you from having success with it. I think the problem,
Mhm.
I have a lot of coaches in my world. And so, when we're selling ourselves, I think for women, a lot of times it's a lack of belief in self. And that's where the work is. And that's why I think business is one of the most spiritual things you can do because it requires such a level of like surrender and reinvention and self development to have success. Otherwise, you won't have success because you have to get to a point where you have such confidence and belief in yourself and what you offer. And that's a whole journey in itself. And then once you get to a point where you're 10 out of 10, again, high conversion rates, magnetism, magic, it just sells itself.
I am working on something with my therapist where I was like, my life's work is my purpose. Everything that I do is an offer essentially. But then that started to put so much freaking pressure on me to the
Wow.
point where I was not prioritizing play. It took me so long to start dance.
Mm,
Like, because I was just like, no, I need to like hustle. I need to be a student. I need to do all these things. So I was like, way too much in that physical aspect. I don't know, so obsessive about this notion of purpose and work and having these perfectionistic tendencies. I feel like a lot of women can relate with that too. It's like, oh, well, I need the perfect morning routine. Otherwise, I'm out of alignment. Oh, I need the perfect this, or I need to feel abundant and expansive
mm,
every day. Otherwise, I'm not going to bring in that sales before
mm,
noon. It can also lean into that other extreme where
mm.
we're now suddenly holding ourselves extremely accountable and
Yes.
responsible for everything. And so that's something that I've having have had to do a lot of work on is like I can't just live in the accountability, in the responsibility, because now suddenly I'm also showing up in my friendships, in my family. Like I'm doing this because I have to.
Yeah,
I,
I would call that legalism. So, which is interesting because my back, like it's funny because I was born Jewish. I love my Jewish heritage and I believe in Jesus. But one of the reasons why I feel so excited about my faith with like Jesus and the New Testament and all of that is because there's such a message of grace. Because if you're just focused on the legalism, which is if you look at Old Testament, if you look at the 10 commandments, if you look at Leviticus or the
mm,
oral literature, the oral teachings and laws of Judaism, just use this as an example. It is like hundreds of things you have to do in order to earn your way to heaven and be a good person. And the truth is, it is so unrealistic. It is so unforgiving. That's the pressure. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. It's not our nature. It's not a thing. And so what I love about like faith is there's so much grace. And so we do our best to be present and checked in and to have the like thank God for the tools that we know that help us have alignment and be better and be the best we can. But for example, if I were to hold myself to this standard of a perfect morning routine when all I can do is literally like cry on my knees for an hour and a half in devastation of like the grief and the loss of the breakup, and then I get mad at myself or put pressure on myself that I didn't do my perfect morning routine, it's just a downward spiral from there. So it's interesting because one of the mantras that I learned from my mentor was integrity equals sales. So what I've discovered, and she has said this too, and she's so funny because she is the ultimate boss personality. I mean, she is such a ball buster, and she's really worked on her femininity and grace. And now it's so crazy. Like when I first came into her company and I saw them making millions of dollars with very minimal marketing, I'm like, how the F are you guys doing this? Because I was actually more in my masculine and in that doing than her, because she's so gotten to the point of this like alignment and integrity where it was so just her essence and so much grace. One of the things I learned from her is that if she was ever going through something where she was like emotional and sad, she would show up legitimately to these corporate meetings with these super high power executives, like crying, a 10 out of 10 emotional integrity, and boom, sale, 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 sale. And I've discovered that
Wow.
myself. Like in the month of August, it was really interesting. It was my birthday month, but it was also like such a bittersweet month of going through this breakup. And I was like, honestly, a mess. And yet, somehow there was this grace of the fact that I was choosing emotional integrity. I wasn't choosing the perfection of my routine, but the legalism of what I have to do to earn my way to get to a certain point. I was choosing emotional integrity, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. And these like opportunities and prospects and clients and whatever, like all kinds of sales were just falling into my lap. And that's the grace of alignment. That's the grace of bringing whatever, like for me, it's God, but like whatever your higher power is, your alignment principles are, and that forgiveness with yourself and with other people. My prayer every day is, thank you, God, for helping me see myself the way that you see me. And thank you for helping me see others the way that you see them. And so it's this foundation of forgiveness and grace. And then from there, we can take the action. But first and foremost, it's grace and forgiveness.
Wow. I think a lot of us, like I don't know if you're familiar with the gene keys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my life's work is literally to get over force and to go into majesty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm like an extremely forceful person in like, just forcing situations, forcing myself. And so I'm constantly, and my moon, if this means anything to you, but my moon is in Aquarius. So I'm extremely detached from my emotions. So it's just like so much
Oh,
work to get in touch with
interesting.
this. Yeah, but it is truly like when I do it and I surrender and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
what the hell's going on? Let's go into it.
Yeah.
Let's be honest with ourselves. It's such a clearing process. Like, it's just like,
Mm,
stop lying to yourself. Like, if you're
mm.
being really, really honest with yourself, what you need to clear, right?
That's
When you
right.
wake up in the morning and it's just like, okay, and if you need a day or
Yep.
two, then maybe that's what it is. Because I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you what you think about cycle syncing
Mm.
in sales.
Yes. I love that
Like,
question.
what's your experience been there? Just to be, again, honoring the feminine,
Yes.
honoring your body, and honoring those also the beauty that we have access to in these different phases. When I'm
Mm.
on my moon, like I'm also way more
Oh,
sensitive and I can just tap into myself more deeply and honoring that during that time. What have your experiences
totally.
been?
Well, and again, if you look at the archetypes where the boss personality hates feelings and would do anything to, like, there's coping mechanisms of distraction to avoid having to deal with feelings. And why would we avoid having to deal with feelings? Well, because they're scary. I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but it's like if I actually allow myself to dive into those dark abyss moments of feelings, what if I never come out? What if I'm just depressed for the rest of my life? It's a dark tunnel with no light at the end. So I better stay over here at the surface. And even if it's unhealthy, do this coping mechanism to numb out or distract or whatever, then go into those feelings. That's a lie. And the truth is, if we go into the feelings and we allow ourselves to process, there is a stopping point. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And it's actually, the outcome is reinvention. because it takes a lot of bravery to go into those feelings. The outcome is reinvention, and you become a different, better, higher level version of yourself. You become a more magnetic version of yourself, a more confident version of yourself, a version of yourself who knows you can deal with fucking anything. And so you have a vibration of expansion when you choose to do this, because now your capacity expands and you're no longer trying to control your feelings, your environment. Ooh, I don't want to like ripple the waters here, do that there. I'm a people pleaser here. I'm going to people please with myself, avoid, avoid, avoid. What that does is it creates contraction, which limits your ability to receive, because basically God's saying she's not a good steward of the resources because she can't handle it. But if you know that you can handle it, you can move through it, your capacity expands. So now you can receive more. Now you become a better steward of whatever those opportunities are. So with our cycle, I like to set myself up to win because I know during ovulation, it's really like a week and a half to 2 weeks, depending on my stress levels of the month, like that sort of like post period ovulation time before that like luteal phase starts, where I'm a fucking superhero. And so I know that in that time, I get to like lean in and press in and really make the magic happen and really show up for myself and really show up for my community and like really be super productive. And then I know that like I really put the work in, and in terms of focus, not just like doing the thing, but also focus and intentioning and prayer and visualization and working in the energetic and all of that. So I really put the work in that period of time. And then when I start to transition into that more emotional sensitive time of like PMS and like moving into that, I can pretty much feel it. And I've made a deal with myself where I don't make any big decisions in that week and a half leading up to my cycle. I made a promise to myself because I've made too many
Interesting.
mistakes and broken too many relationships and had too many unnecessary fights, to put it honestly, where I acted out of a feeling that wasn't even really true. It was just a sensitivity. So I made a deal with myself that
Hmm.
in order to honor that deal, I start to wind things down in that period. And that's not to say that I'm perfect. That's not to say that there aren't things that come in that I have to deal with or, show up for or whatever. But like, I really try not to lead trainings during that time. I try not to pack myself with too many like sales calls at that time. I try not to certainly lead events at that time. That can be really challenging. I'll get sick if I lead an event during that period of time. So I really
Oh
try to
yeah.
avoid that. That's a good time for me for like copywriting or creativity, or I like to do my own graphic design. It's just fun for me. So that more of like just me and my computer type of like creative putting on my headphones,
Hermit.
me going to a cafe, nourishing myself, sitting down and getting into a flow. That's what I do in that time. Making sure that
Mm,
I'm also definitely nourishing my body in a way that is high quality and getting plenty of sleep and obviously plenty of time with God. And so going for long walks, like even my workout routine changes. Ovulation is like strength training,
same.
high intensity training, possibly sometimes strong Pilates, whatever. During that like time leading up to my period, it's like a lot of walks, sunshine, literally just even laying out, maybe doing a little bit of mobility work here and there, but definitely not anything too intense. And then after the first day or two of my cycle, I'll usually start to feel better at that point and can slowly start to ramp things up. But depending on what's going on that month, it just depends. I'll make sure, like, if someone wants to book a call with me and I'm in that period of time where I'm more sensitive, I let it be okay that I don't book a call that day or book a call a few days out. Like, I let that be okay. I've learned to really honor that
Hard.
because, again, the cost and the consequence of just trying to force it all in is too high.
Mhm. Wow. I'm just thinking because we never work in isolation, and I feel like this concept is still pretty new. How do you is that something that you find yourself having to explain to others? Like, how do you do that gracefully?
I have been talking about it to my community now for quite a few years. And so, anyone in my world, if they've been in my world for a period of time, like I've trained them, they know I operate that way. My
Okay.
friends know like I've just trained my world that's how I do things. I will also tell you, interestingly enough, from like just a physiology standpoint, the last year I've been doing a lot of detoxing, parasite cleanse, heavy metal, all that kind of stuff, drainage protocols, coffee enemas, hydrogen water. I've been doing a lot of these things, and it's actually reduced the severity of my sort of detrimental
Hmm.
symptoms of my cycle, which has increased my capacity. My sleep has gotten better. I've lost a ton of weight. My hormones have balanced, which has really helped in terms of being able to navigate that season every month more gracefully. There was a time where I literally just wouldn't leave the house for a
Hmm.
week. And it's not like that for me
Yeah.
anymore. I went from being completely
Crazy.
introvert, antisocial, and I'm not like that anymore. Like I can function a little bit better now. I think getting those toxins out of my system really helped that a lot. I don't have to necessarily set those boundaries as strongly as I used to because I've taken care of my physiology.
I think like a lot of it comes down to in terms of the integrity. I'm trying to just understand if I'm the audience, like there's so many things to hold on to. They're so interwoven with one another. Like if you think of these little like the wheels that make a whole machine like or a clockwork move, they're all intertwined,
Yeah.
relating and connect. If one wheel stops turning, then the other one. If you're out of alignment spiritually, you stop believing in yourself, then
Yeah.
obviously that has emotional consequences, physical
Yes. Yes.
consequences. This is a fundamental thing that women struggle with in general. It's just like this sacrificing of your self-expression to accommodate others, to be the person who harmonizes, to be the person who's in service. And I guess what I'm trying to say with that is like, how do you have the belief in yourself when the whole world is teaching you that you have to honor other people and that you don't come first?
Yeah.
I feel like those two things are very connected because the less we take care of ourselves, the less confident we are in ourselves because
Yes.
we don't trust subconsciously that
Yes.
we've got our
That's right.
backs. And so is that something that you've experienced coaching your clients? Is that
Yeah.
it kind of starts with their spirituality?
A
Where do you
question I would
see
encourage
the
everybody to
beginning?
write down is what are the prices you're willing to pay? Because living your dream life doesn't come for free. It's going to take something. It's going to take some sacrifice. When I was making the decisions in my 20s to go off the beaten path and not be a doctor or a lawyer like my parents wanted me to do, I went for years without speaking with them because I couldn't have a conversation with them without it going completely sideways. And they just didn't know how to navigate a conversation with their daughter who's doing all these like off the wall things. Not, I mean, they're not off the wall, but like for them,
Mhm.
they were, you know? And
Absolutely.
so, like, I was willing to pay the price of not being in conversation or relationship with them for that period of time for the sake of being on purpose. Now, not everyone's going to have to pay that
Mhm.
price, but you may have to. And are you willing to? Which is more important to you, those relationships or your purpose? And hopefully, not everyone has to face that, but you may have to. Or, for example, I've written down, and so I'm really clear about this, and it's not easy, but I know for my purpose and my impact, I am willing to pay the price of inconvenience, of discomfort, of being misunderstood, of being tired, of being scared, of people doubting me, and of having uncomfortable, hard conversations. I am willing to pay all those prices. And I've written that down and I've made that agreement with myself. Does that mean that I have to pay those prices? No. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I do, though. Sometimes, like, I'll post something online that was very well intentioned and I'll get like a slew of hate mail. And then, okay, what am I going to do now? Well, first of all, I can't be mad because I already decided I was willing to pay this price. So what do I do? And I've navigated that in all kinds of different ways over the years. Sometimes I stand my ground. Sometimes later, I'm like, wow, I didn't know that it was going to have that impact. Here's an apology message acknowledging that I was in the wrong. And here's what I really meant to say. I'm sorry for if I hurt anybody. Right. And you like navigate it as it comes. So, first of all, I would say, be connected to the prices you're willing to pay for your purpose. It's just the reality of how we have to do things sometimes. I'm not saying that like you have to go and say fuck everybody and like sacrifice all your relationships, but there are going to be times where there's people who are well-meaning, who are crabs in a bucket pulling you down, and you get to make a powerful decision of how you're going to navigate that relationship and who are you going to be more loyal to, the crab in the bucket pulling you down or yourself and your vision and your purpose. And you must make that decision and make it really clear to yourself and to other people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is if you're
Oof.
really, really, really out of alignment with yourself and in your life, you're not going to be able to tackle all the types of integrity all at once. You probably are going to want to do just a couple things at a time. And maybe there's some accountability with that. With my mentor, we would call it promises and consequences. So it's sort of like, I'm making a promise to myself that I am going to go, let's say just something simple, go to the gym 3 times a week. And if I don't go to the gym 3 times a week, and if like, it's like the end of the week and I haven't done my third gym visit, then I get to call my mom and have a lovely conversation with her, right? Like sometimes the consequence can be something positive, right? Or like one of the ones for
Yeah.
me, I was working on saving. And so if I don't save 10% of my income at the time, then I don't get to have the coffee that I love at the end of the week. So it's sort of like a double benefit. Or another one would be if I, like, in terms of taking care of yourself and your business, if I don't do 5 sales reach outs every single day, then I get to get down and do like 10 push-ups. Right? Either way, you come out on top. You don't want to have to pay the consequence, but either way, you come out on top. So there's certain like accountability things you can do to like start to set yourself up to win. And you can be accountable to like a friend or to your coach or to something like that. There's so many different things I do with my clients to set up like really positive accountability like that. But it just starts to put you in that direction of confidence that, yes, I believe in myself. I know that I'm somebody who does what I say I'm going to do. People around me like believe me that I'm the person who does what I say I'm going to do. And it just slowly starts to put those bricks in the wall of your confidence so that you know you can start to really build something.
Music to my ears. I love everything you just said. Like, it's so true. And honestly, I always think like discipline feels good. Like,
Yes.
accountability feels good. Trusting in yourself it feels good.
Yes.
When do you get tired of it? Like, I had one, I don't know, my mom said this to me. I was like struggling. I wanted like to achieve some kind of like weight loss goal. I hate talking about it because like weight loss, like, it's just
Yeah.
like as women, we always want to lose weight, like whatever. But anyway, this was this. I wanted to lose weight and she's like, "You'll lose the weight when you're ready to."
Yes.
Like emotionally, but also when you're like mentally ready to like do the thing.
Yes.
Like, like it's not going to come out of
Right.
nowhere and that's just what it is. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be overpowering. It's just finding that right balance for yourself
Yeah.
and doing it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I have so many questions still, but maybe I can have you on a
We'll have a
second
part
time. You're so
two.
amazing. You're so amazing. I love it so much. I just love how I mean, honestly, thank you for the work you've put into
Mm.
yourself because this just really shows like the actual work that you've done. And when we work and then we learn and then we share with others. So thank you so
Yeah.
much
Oh,
for
appreciate
doing
that.
that, for showing up. Yeah, I appreciate you. Um
I
but I
appreciate
think
your
this is a beautiful.
appreciation.
Yeah, no, I think we're reaching the end of this conversation. I loved it so much. Yeah, thanks so much for showing up.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, like I would love to hear anyone who listened to this, if this made a difference for you. It's so nice to know that I'm making a positive difference for somebody. So you can send me a message on Instagram, like love hearing from people. Like, this is my biggest takeaway. Like, I love that feedback. So we totally appreciate that.